Welcome back to the Power of Coffee. This is the next 10 pages to make it the 180th page of the story. Where are we now in the story? Okay, so now we know that Martha has reopened the coffee shop, okay? And she's recruited a few friends from high school. That's Margaret and Mamie C, to assist her, okay? And now they are tasting their coffee and chocolate drink to see if they've mixed it up well before serving it to the customers, okay? So on the first day of reopen, there wasn't much patronage because they just came back. So that's where we are now in the story. So join me as we continue the story to reach the 180th page of the story, The Power of Coffee. Let's continue now. Okay. The patronage wasn't so high that day because we had been away for long and people were now waking up to us. However, I didn't let that bother me since I had made up my mind to manage the place. Since I had made up my mind to manage the place instead of looking for another job. Dora brought in the cooked rice, which quickly sold out. Dora is another assistant, okay? Assistant that Martha got through her friends. So, Dora brought in the cooked rice, which quickly sold out, also at half price. Subsequently, I asked her for a second pot of rice, and that also soon disappeared. It was clear that the rice could make us rich, and so I put all my eggs in that basket. For a whole week, everyone played his part well. The cleaners, the waitresses, me, Mamiesi, and Margaret, our accountant. The customers grew to full limit after the first 5 days of reopening. The customers grew to full limit after the first 5 days of our reopening. It seemed like we were back in Betty's days until something happened. Something completely unexpected. Okay, the customers grew to full limit after the first 5 days of our reopening. It seemed like we were back in Betty's days until something happened. Okay, it seemed like we were back in Betty's days until something happened. Something completely unexpected. The investigation into Lumley's death was over now, according to Detective Angela Gatton. Everything that needed to be seen and heard in terms of testimonies was now in the hands of the court. Her suspect, Claire Didier, was going to face the court today. A month ago, Angela met her in her office once again, and this time she told her the truth about Lumley. She's dead? Claire asked, appearing stunned. Yes, she is. According to the autopsy results, she suffered a concussion. Maybe she fell, or someone pushed her, or attacked her, Angela said, in a casual but tactful tone. Claire was staring at her, but it seemed she was in deep thought, because her eyes were fixated on something other than her face. Angela stared at her in the same way, analyzing her response to the news. In addition to the testimonies of those who met Lumley on the day of her incident, Angela saw the only video evidence of Lumley in the hospital that day. Though the CCTV cameras that had been installed. Okay, so now we are where Detective Angela Gatton is, okay, in Canada. The investigation into Lumley's death is over and they are now in court, okay? But before that, she went to see her only suspect, Claire Didier, once again and told her the truth that Lumley had died, okay? After telling her the truth about Lumley's death, Claire was she was stunned, okay, by the news, and she got into thinking, okay. So that's where we are now in the story. In addition to the testimonies of those who met Lamley on the day of her incident, Angela saw the only video evidence of Lamley in the hospital that day. Through the CCTV cameras that had been installed in the public regions of the hospital, such as the lobby and the reception hall. In all of the footage, Lamley appeared to be going about her duties like everyone else, and there was nothing to prove that she was in danger or had been hurt. Consequently, Angela focused her attention on Claire. She dug into her personal life, investigating her marriage, her parentage, and all her immediate relatives, anyone who knew her or played a role in her upbringing, and later on in her adult life. Angela interviewed her ex-husband, Jamie Brandt, to find out what caused their divorce. But the man didn't say anything she couldn't have imagined. Okay, so after meeting with Claire Didier one more time and telling her the truth about Lamley's death, she did some investigation. Okay, Detective Angela Gatton did some more investigation on Claire Didier's life. And she happened to meet her ex-husband, her ex-husband, Jamie Brandt. Okay, Jamie Brandt. Angela interviewed her ex-husband, Jamie Brandt, to find out what caused their divorce, but the man didn't say anything she couldn't have imagined. He blamed her for everything, not being a submissive wife, arguing with him over every little thing, such as him taking alcohol or spending time away from the house. Yes. Angela asked him about her relationship. Okay. Angela interviewed her ex-husband, that is Claire Didier's ex-husband, that's Jamie Brandt, to find out what caused their divorce, but the man didn't say anything she couldn't have imagined. He blamed her for everything, not being a submissive wife, arguing with him over every little thing, such as him taking alcohol or spending time away from the house. Angela asked him about her relationship with her son. Was she a good mother to Benjamin? Did she ever do anything that could endanger the boy? Jamie was abrupt in his response, revealing that Benjamin was always with her, and she usually took him away from the house the moment Jamie, came home. He said that he rarely spent time around them because she simply disappeared with him the moment he entered the house. Afterward, he chuckled. Angela met Claire's mother, who resided in an elderly home. She was 75 years old and appeared healthy. She was alone in the gardens, sitting under a tree and reading a book when Angela met her. After introducing herself as a policewoman, she asked her to After introducing herself as a policewoman, she asked her to verify her identity as Gladys Barrows. Okay, so now Detective Angela Gatton has gone to meet with Claire Didier's mother, who lives in an elderly home. Now, after she introduces herself as a police officer, she asks Claire's mother to verify her identity as being Gladys Barrows. That's Claire's mother. The woman smiled, looking up at her, and then replied that she indeed was Gladys Barrows, but she hadn't committed any crime worth the police's attention. Angela chuckled thereafter, and the woman broke into a soft laughter. Subsequently, they began to talk. Gladys recounted Claire's childhood in a cheerful tone. She talked about her favorite meals and games, dresses and toys, and also about Claire's father. He was a good man. He provided us with enough. We went on fishing trips with him. He was always at home, except for when he was at work. I can't say anything bad about him. But then he left us. One day, out of the blue, he just disappeared. She said in a casual yet emotional tone. Angela asked if he ever came back, and if she reported his disappearance to the police. Of course, I told the police about it. And they said they would look for him. And they did. They found him in just a few days after he had been gone for nearly a month. At this point, Angela thought she knew the story. She was feeling upset in herself for letting the woman recount something she would rather forget. "I'm sorry," she began, but then Gladys interrupted with a loud, shocking laughter that made her shiver a little in her seat. But it was short. It ended in just about 2 minutes. Subsequently, she went quiet. Angela stared at her. Her face was bright, not sad, and she appeared to be thinking. After 5 minutes, when she was still silent, Angela softly called out, "Mrs. Barrows," and then she glanced at her and softly replied, "It's Gladys, just that." "All right, sorry. Gladys, you wanted to tell me something about your husband," Angela calmly said. Gladys glanced at her and then gently smiled and replied, "What do you want to know?" Anything at all. Why did he disappear? What happened when the police found him? Did he come back home to you and Claire? "What are you going to do when you find him?" Gladys said, in a soft but confident tone, looking at her. Angela smiled and appeared a little nervous. She wasn't expecting this from her. She had thought the entire time that she was speaking to someone who had her wits around her. Gladys, you said the police found him. So where is he? Is he alive?" she said, just to verify what she thought about the woman's mental state. "Alive? Of course he's alive. Why wouldn't he be? He had a good job. He had money. He had a car. He just left," Gladys said, and then she picked up the book she had been reading, and then opened it up and held it over her face. Angela stared at her and realized that she wasn't reading, just hiding her face behind the book. She smiled and then got up to leave. "Gladys, thank you. Have a nice day," Angela said, and then she shifted the book, exposing her face, and then gently smiled and nodded. Angela smiled back, and then that was it. Gladys Barrows was the only known relative of Claire Didier, aside from her ex-husband Jamie. When Angela checked Claire's birth records, she found her father's name as Clan Boots and her mother's as Gladys Barrows. When Angela checked Claire's birth records, she found her father's name as Clan Boots and her mother's as Gladys Barrows. She ran a search on him using those records, but couldn't find anything to suggest where he currently was. He had no presence anywhere else. He had no presence anywhere except on the paper. That seemed like the end of the road in discovering Claire's background. But then she thought of checking out the adoption department, since Claire had a different surname from her father. Finding out about her background could provide insight on her present mental state, and that could help them in Lumley's case. After about 3 minutes of silence, Claire returned to the room. She softly inhaled and then remarked, "I'm sorry to hear about that. Okay, so we learned that Detective Angela Gatton went to see Claire's mother. She went to see Claire's mother after she had the last conversation with Claire. She went to see Claire's mother. After the first conversation with Claire, she dug more into Claire's life, Claire Didier's life. Claire is a suspect in Lumley's concussion and eventual death, okay? So, after Angela has seen her the first time, she dug more into her life and she met with her mother. First, she met with her ex-husband, Jamie Brand, who didn't tell her anything, okay, useful about Claire's life, except that she was always with her son. And so she met with Claire's mother, Gladys Barrows. Gladys Barrows was not in her right state of mind, so she couldn't provide the information she wanted about Claire. So she went on to check her birth records to see if she was adopted, because Claire's surname was Didier, not that of her father, Clem Woods. Okay, so that's where we are now. So this was after meeting the first time with Claire Didier. So on the second meeting with Claire, she told Claire about the death of Lumley, and Claire went silent for some time. But now she's back, okay? She's back into the room with her. She's back from her silence. She's back from her thinking, and she's going to continue. The conversation, okay? She's going to continue the conversation with Detective Angela Gatton now, because she's back from her moment of silence, okay? All right. After about 3 minutes of silence, Claire returned to the room. She softly inhaled and then remarked, "I'm sorry to hear about that, but why are you telling me this?" Angela quietly inhaled and then softly replied, "Claire, we have reason to believe that you met Lumley alone in your room after you were admitted to the hospital. We believe that she came to check on you after you woke up from your sleep, and then something must have happened. Maybe you two got into an argument, or maybe it was simply an accident. Tell me the truth, because I know you're innocent. You're not a killer." Those were the last words that Angela said to her. Because she said nothing in response, she couldn't interrogate her further. She only sat staring at her, but not really at her, since her mind was elsewhere. Where did this come from? When did the police come to consider her a criminal? Who was this woman they claimed she had killed? Was it that nurse? That nurse who told her about her son being taken away by someone else because she wasn't mentally fit to care for him? She pondered and remained in her seat at the office until it was late. That evening she did not go home. She called up Mrs. Dupont and asked her to stay with Benjamin, since she was caught up in traffic and might not make it home early. Consequently, she left the office and then drove away in her car. 30 minutes later, she arrived at a building which appeared to host a law firm. Okay, so now we're talking about Claire Didier. After Detective Angela Gatton has spoken to her about what could have happened, after she told her that Lumley had died and there was a chance that she met her in her room, okay, that day on August 5, when she was admitted to the hospital after a near-fatal accident. Claire Didier did not go home that day, okay? She told Mrs. Dupont, who was a neighbor, to take care of her son Benjamin, and told her that she was caught up in the bad traffic and will be back or will be home later, okay? So after making that call to Mrs. Dupont, she went to see a lawyer. So that's where we are now in the story. That evening she did not go home. She called up Mrs. Dupont and asked her to stay with Benjamin, since she was caught up in traffic and might not make it home early. Consequently, she left the office and then drove away in her car. 30 minutes later, she arrived at a building which appeared to host a law firm. She hurried out of her car and then took the elevator that led she hurried out of her car and then took the elevator that led to the third floor of the building where the law firm was situated. Okay. She took the elevator that led to the third floor where the law firm was situated. Minutes later, she was knocking on the door. The call came for her to enter, and then she obeyed. A light-skinned, stout man in suit and tie sat at a table with two associates. A young man and woman, age approximately 35 to 40 years old. Okay, so this is about Claire Didier. She went to see a lawyer, okay? She hurried out of her car and then took the elevator that led to the third floor where the law firm was situated. Minutes later, she was knocking on the door. The call came for her to enter, and then she obeyed. A light-skinned, stout man in suit and tie sat at a table with two associates. A young man and woman, age approximately 35 to 40 years old. The man appeared to be in his mid-50s. His colleagues sat opposite him at the table, and they all turned to look at Claire Didier when she entered. "Hi," she said, with an abrupt smile, and they responded likewise. Minutes later, the two associates left, and she was alone with a man in his mid-50s. He introduced himself as Klaus Neuermann, an attorney and the owner of the law firm, and consequently, Claire spilled the beans while sober. Okay, so now we see that Claire Didier, the suspect in Lamley's death and concussion and death, has gone to see a lawyer, and this was after she met with Detective Angela Gatton for the second time in her office. "They want to charge me with a crime I know nothing about," she said in tears. The man stared at her with concern and then handed her a tissue to dry up her face with. But she shook her head and didn't take it. "I have done nothing wrong. I have a son. He's only 7 years old. Who is going to take care of him when I'm gone? Who?" she said, deeply sobbing at this stage. "Ma'am, please calm down. There must be an explanation for this. Please, calm down," Klaus said, in an accent that sounded a bit of French and German. Claire stared at him and then gently nodded, and consequently picked up the tissue she had earlier rejected, and then blew her nose into it. Klaus briefly glanced away, and then gently smiled. Moments later, Claire was quiet. The tears had stopped, and she appeared composed. "Would you like anything to drink? Coffee? Chocolate?" he said, and subsequently got up from his seat. He walked to a table at a corner of the large room and then began to make some chocolate for her, though she did not respond first. "Would you like anything to drink? Coffee? Chocolate?" he said, and subsequently got up from his seat. He walked to a table at the corner of the large room and then began to make some chocolate for her, though she did not respond first. Okay? "Thank you, I'm okay," she said with a brief smile. 2 minutes later, he was back with a glass of chocolate, which he handed to her in a saucer. "You can sip it while you tell me the whole story. Why did the police come to you? Why do you think they are accusing you?" Klaus said in a casual tone, and then took his seat. Claire stared at him, as though thinking of what to say, and then she took up the glass of chocolate and then sipped continuously for about 3 minutes before putting down the glass. I don't recall the last time it rained this heavily. It sounds like some bombs are dropping up. I don't recall the last time it rained this heavily. It sounds like some bombs are dropping on the roof of the coffee shop. Thank God everyone is inside. I mean, all the staff is. It's Thursday, late afternoon, about 3:30 p.m. now. According to my wristwatch, I'm in the kitchen with Mommy Essie, cleaning some plates and cups while chatting. But we had to stop because of the rain. There are about 20 people in the dining area and about 5 waitresses attending to them. Mommy Essie is attending to their orders while I do the dishes. The rain has been on for about 20 minutes now, and there's no telling when it will stop. I'm almost done with the plate, but I feel like checking on the dining room to see how things are doing there. Essie, I'll soon be back. I'm checking on the customers. Okay, so at this point, we are narrating the story in Martha's voice, okay? We are back at the coffee shop where Martha is there with Mommy Essie, okay? Okay, she replies, and I immediately leave the room. I feel a little anxious about something, but I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm worried that something could go wrong because of the rain. The lights are on and not blinking. But I feel a bit worried that the electricity company could take them away any time. I just got to the dining hall and I realized there are more people than I thought. There are more people there than I thought. There are school children, there are school pupils in uniform. There are school pupils in uniform huddled up at the corner of the room, seated and chatting. Okay. I can also see some sellers with their wares. And then there are some laborers, in construction helmets. Wow, it seems there's everyone in here. All right, that's okay. I glance about and then walk to the door. It's open. Outside is a netted door, and it's unlocked, the same way as the inner one. All right, it seems everything is in order, so I'm going back to the kitchen. I begin to walk away when the door suddenly opens, and I tend to see who it could be. A man walks in, holding a large black plastic bag over his head. He's tall and slightly dark in tone. His head is bent as he shakes up the water from his shoes, so I can't figure out his face. Suddenly, he lifts his head and then stares straight at me and smiles. I smiled back, automatically. I stared at him, wondering who he was, since he appeared familiar. Suddenly, someone screamed. It was a woman's voice, and I tend to see who it was. Suddenly, someone screamed. It was a woman's voice, and I tend to see who it was that just scared me. It was one of the waitresses, and she was running towards me. Oh no, it was towards him instead. Okay, so now we realize that Martha has entered the dining room of the coffee shop, and she's found so many people there seeking shelter from the rain. But as she tends to go away, a man just walks in. Okay? And then, after the man has made eye contact with her, a woman screams. Okay? So a woman suddenly screams, and she tends to see who it was that screamed. And it turns out it's one of the waitresses. Okay? And then, after the woman has screamed, after she's seen that is the waitress that has screamed, it seems as though the waitress has recognized the man, but Martha doesn't know who he is. So that's where we are now in the story. It was one of the waitresses, and she was running towards me. Oh no, it was towards him instead. "Hey!" she cried when she had reached him. I moved a few steps from where I was to take a closer look at this man that I did not know. But I still couldn't recognize him since the two were embracing. She held on to him for about 3 minutes before releasing him to a handful of curious folks. Then I saw his face, and moments later I stood frozen, smiling in disbelief. This was the man from Home Wars, a funny family-oriented comedy TV show on Channel 38. Kobina, that was his name on the show. He was the family head and probably the funniest amongst them all. Kobina Hansen is here? In our coffee shop? No, this is too much, I screamed in my head. I tried to get to him, just to look at him and smile in awe. But he was completely surrounded. He was now standing in the middle of the room and taking selfies with the rain refugees. I chuckled, amazed by what I was seeing. Then Mamiesi called my name as she entered the room. "Martha, what is happening? Martha, what is happening?" Someone is here," I said, smiling at her. "Who is it?" she said in an excited tone, lifting her head to see within the crowd of fans. "Kobina in Home Wars," I remarked, and she was quiet for about a minute, trying to recall who that was. Then, out of the blue, she screamed, and then ran towards the crowd. After about 40 minutes of going through the length and breadth of the room, Kobina sat down, and then we served him some warm chocolate and some cookies. Okay, so this marks the end of the 180th page of the story, The Power of Coffee. At this point, we learn that someone famous, someone popular has just entered the coffee shop. His name, or his character's name, is Kobina Hansen, He's an actor, a popular actor, and he's just entered the coffee shop, So that is where we are now. We'll be back for the next 10 pages to learn who this actor is and what his impact on the coffee shop is, or is going to be. So join me for the next 10 pages of The Power of Coffee.